Welcome to Taking the Higher Road, a Driver Reach and FreightWaves production. I'm Leah Shaver, President and CEO of the National Transportation Institute. In Jerry's absence, I'm excited to be back with you to host another exceptional leader on the podcast today. On this show, we interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver life cycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges, driver recruiting and retention. Your feedback is very important to us, and your kind reviews keep us on the hunt for more great talent to put in front of you. Please remember to rate and review Taking the Higher Road on whatever platform you are using to listen. Today, we welcome to the show one of my favorite personalities in the industry and someone on the front lines of pairing the right drivers with the right jobs. Sean Horton, VP of Sales at Jobs and Logistics and jobsandtrucks.com. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Taking the Higher Road.
Awesome, and thank you for having me. It's been so long, I've been waiting for the opportunity, Very happy to have you, Leah. I hope Mr. Raymer is doing well.
We will just tell him that I beat him to the punch as it pertains to having you on as a guest on the show. So, Sean, I want to start with an icebreaker here. I have to ask about your signature look, the bow tie. Give us the bow tie backstory and how it came to be your signature look. And before you share with us, I just want you to know there is one bow tie in the Shaver household. It is a green sequin bow tie. It's even seasonally appropriate, but I just didn't want to take away from your own sparkle. So tell us about your signature look, the bow tie.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, as it is quite the talking point with many, as you can imagine. So it's actually a beautiful story. You can't buy this kind of stuff. But ultimately, when the day is said and done, I started with this organization, Jobs and Logistics and jobsandtrucks.com. My wonderful president, Amy Noah, said, "Hey, Sean, you know what? You have a great personality. We really need to get you in the trenches and really get you involved here in the trucking and transportation space." So she said, "We're going to the Mid-America Truck Show." And I said, "Great. I don't know what the Mid-America Truck Show is, but I'm happy to jump on board." So fast forward, I'm the guy that shows up in a three-piece suit with bow ties to the Mid-America Truck Show. So saying that one of us is not like the other might be an understatement, as I very much stood out among the masses. And the rest is more or less history, as it took on like wildfire. Most people thought I was an accountant or a lawyer. But ultimately, when the day is said and done, it's worked, as I now am officially the bow tie guy in the trucking and transportation space.
Well, ironically, you say it was to stand out in the crowd, and that is exactly how we see you here at NTI. So I love that that's part of the backstory, and I know Amy very well. But frankly, your bow tie is why you are here and not her. So thank you so much for being the one to stand out in the crowd. One question that I always like to ask our guests on the show, because it's a common theme in our industry, including for me, people in trucking don't necessarily seek out careers in the industry, but they land here unintentionally. When they do, they realize what an amazing industry it truly is, that it gets in your veins, and they end up staying for a long time. It can become part of your identity even, and it truly has for me and so many other people that I know. So I want to ask about your backstory, how you found yourself working with Amy in the trucking industry. You have a background in digital marketing and sales, and now you've been in various roles at Jobs and Logistics for like over 10 years, right? So give us your trucking backstory real fast.
Of course, quick and easy. It's actually quite funny. So previously, I worked for a career builder in Gannett, helping support, of course, their efforts to provide digital solutions to newspaper, print media, advertisers in the individual newspaper market. So that's ultimately where I got my space. I supported healthcare and manufacturing clients most definitely. So nothing to do with logistics and transportation at all. Fast forward, I found myself looking for employment, and I got a phone call from a little British gentleman by the name of Don Firth. He told me he was the CEO and owner of a company named jobsandlogistics.com. And I said, "Okay, thank you for your time." And I actually hung up on it. I had not recalled or was not aware of course, the sites themselves. And, the unfortunate reality is that I had programmed myself to be a little bit more on edge when starting to hear a voice that had a little bit of an accent on it. Not to be that guy fully, but just kind of part of it in the recruitment and advertising space where your ears kind of perk up. So fast forward, Did a little bit of research, discovered this was a real little British man that does have a fantastic organization. So promptly called him back, and was fortunate enough to not have shot myself in the foot, and did successfully gain an interview with both Amy, and then at the time, our vice president was Emma Firth, Dodd's daughter, and the rest is more or less history at this point.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you, of course, not only in the industry, but of course on today's show. So let's dive into those recruiting topics. I'm curious to hear your take on this last year. 2023, the story of the year is pretty much wrapped up. How would you describe it? The main trends, the themes, the takeaways from your perspective as a vendor working in the driver recruiting space in 2023?
Eye-opening and challenging. What I'd say that the two simple terms that I would look to characterize. So still being a novice in the space, so having just under a decade of experience in the transportation and logistics industries, I still learn as I go. So to hear the great sages of the industry sharing that they've never experienced like anything they have experienced previously, that's a little bit of an eye-opener when said and done. Folks that continually had provided sense of optimism, senses of understanding as we navigated COVID and find ourselves today. It's eye-opening, and of course it is a bit challenging, right? Being in a vendor space where carriers are not seeing the freight they need to come in. Of course, they're then not hiring drivers. So someone in my shoes can struggle and be challenged a bit when it comes down to not really being needed by many, as has been accustomed to from previous years before. So,
all right, well, let's look at the other side of that question then. Looking ahead to 2024, based on what you're hearing from the fleets that you work with and have for many years, and what you're evaluating as someone in the industry, what are your best guesses for next year? Take out your crystal ball and tell us what you think, and try to get a reflection of the bow tie for the rest of us.
Of course. So, at this point in time, we are starting to see positive trends. So I am starting to see some of my carriers and clients coming back to life, seeing freight coming back in, and having that need to, of course, hire drivers, which is a good just initial sense of optimism as we close out the year and we look to 2024. Crystal ball, right? Obviously depends on the secret sauce and those that you kind of read, subscribe to, and looking at the different reporting and different messaging that does come out. From what I see and what I would guess is we're going to have a good, decent start for Q1, but we're still going to struggle. There's still much realigning that needs to take place, and I see a strong sense of optimism as we get into Q2. And this especially comes from, of course, the Fed announcing they're going to be pulling back or not increasing overall interest rates. So I think some of the fears and some of the unknown that plagued many of us, whether it's the consumers, of course, we need to be buying stuff, or again, it's the carriers and the producers looking to provide goods for us to move and ship. I will see a turnaround in that Q2 segment with 2024 overly being a positive year when said and done.
Excellent. Well, you heard it here first. So Sean, when I look at your company site, specifically jobsandtrucks.com, part of the broader Jobs and Logistics Network, I see such an expansive mix of job roles, fleet types, qualifications, local, regional, line haul, private fleet, dedicated fleet, package delivery, Class A, Class B, Class C. I have a few questions based on that, and my first revolves around your process for gathering the details about the job in the initial aspect of working with a customer. What are these conversations like? How do you, Sean, work with companies when they come to Jobs and Trucks to gather all of those details to make sure you properly understand the business and can effectively fill those openings?
So opening up, getting the clients, getting the carriers to be as absolutely transparent as possible is key. Many come in, having looked to take steps forward with individual campaigns, individual needs in various formats, which can, hinder them from being open, optimistic, and then, of course, being forthcoming with information and insights that are pertinent. A key piece for me is really what you are wanting to accomplish, right? Just because you are needing to hire a Class A CDL in Indianapolis does not tell the whole story. What is it and the why behind why you're needing to hire this driver? Is it due to growth? Is it due to, unfortunately, attrition? What is the end game that we're looking to accomplish? And that ultimately opens up the conversation as to why we need to fill this role and what's going to be a good fit in order to take positive steps forward to not only hire and bring in a qualified driver, but a driver that is also going to stay with the organization. It is much more than just hey, I need a CDL in Indianapolis, Indiana.
All right. So my second question then, what is the communication process in regards to expectations of how and when a job gets filled? And what I mean by that is if you've got a high paying private fleet job where benefits start day one and the driver's home every night, and that's positioned next to a traditional over the road job where applicants know that's going to be a lot of time away from home, it's going to be basically more of a grind, right? And possibly less money. So how do you communicate with fleets when they're hiring for different jobs about the expectations of how that job gets filled and when?
Of course. So politician's answer here, so I apologize, is it is a bit unique for each individual client and each individual role that we would even be looking to support and work on. So, apples to apples, I wouldn't even necessarily dock those two types of roles or positions up against one another, simply because we are looking at targeting a fully different demographic and a different type of driver between the two individual positions and two individual organizations. And that kind of goes back to that discovery phase, which you asked about before. What is our end goal and what is the perfect fit to truly achieve our goal in order to effectively provide expectations and results? What we're going to pour into said local home daily role or said over the road role is going to be completely different based off of organization. So as much as I hate to give a politician's answer, it really does come down to the carrier, the role, and of course the market itself.
All right. Well, now instead of accountant and attorney, folks are considering politician as the third reason for the origin of the bow tie.
I mean, no.
All right. Last question on this, and we'll move on. At NTI, our team has certainly seen an expansion of the number of job types available to professional drivers. More companies, greater diversity of roles, broader pay ranges, you name it. I'm guessing you've seen that at your company too, and the types of jobs that you market for over, let's say, the past 5 years. So my question in setting all of that up is, again, if you look into that crystal ball for us, where do you see that trend going in the next 3 to 5 years as folks have evolved? What will separate the companies who are successful in meeting their workforce needs within that trend from those who struggle to hire and retain the drivers that they need?
Those that are continuing to able to diversify and be transparent as to the roles and goals of what they're looking to accomplish. I'd say an easy response to that is carriers are starting to understand that we live in a customizable, very personable world, right? I can get on any websites, I can get on, or really anything that I do in my life is very personal and specific to me, what I'm doing and what I need. So as you see, more and more of the carriers understand more about what type of driver do I truly need to fill X role. We're going to see more and more expansion of the individual role types. Specifically, I see more and more opportunities that are including technology on the forefront of those advertisements and the importance and the need to be inclusive of, that element of the potential job. As technology gets to be more entrenched in the individual roles, we're going to be seeing drivers themselves essentially being more and more of quote unquote tech advisors in addition to what they are doing from that driver perspective. So I just see continued growth and continued expansion as to what we're seeing today.
Oh, I got to steer back to you for a minute, Sean.
Do it.
I noticed in your work history on LinkedIn that you spent some time in Australia when you were in college. So my first question is, did you get exposed to any trucking down under? They have quite a trucking culture, if I'm not mistaken.
They do have an amazing trucking culture, and I'll be upfront in saying at that time, trucking and transportation were not even on my radars. I simply found myself in the business as, kind of shared with what got me here in the first place. This seems to be the case with many, but no, my college years, I was more focused on kind of my education. I was going to business school, so I was going to be the next great CEO, all that good stuff when you go to business school. And being in Australia, I was a little bit more concerned with surfing and, checking out the local brews, of course. So, nope, unfortunately, no trucking there.
Of all the study abroad programs and history that I've seen, and I have to tell you, I've looked at thousands of resumes in my human resources career for over 22 years now. I've never seen Australia for that program. So I was pretty impressed. And slightly more seriously, can you just share a little bit about your time there? Did it translate to any of the work that you did or skills that you picked up in your job today? I mean, for those of us, this is really going to date me, but I think of like, what was that guy in Australia, the movie back in the 80s? Paul something was his name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Crocodile
Like,
Dundee.
it's, yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's obviously, I'm truly aging myself, including my memory, but the fact is it's not all the outback, right?
That no, you're absolutely correct. There's much more than the outback, although the outback does encompass quite a lot of the continent, and of course, the history. And I will say, maybe dating myself as well, that Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, was my man and part of the focus on being in Australia in the first place. And I will say, in that adventure that was visiting and living in Perth, Australia, I was able to see the crocodile hunter live at the Australia Zoo before his unfortunate passing. So that's a special little claim to fame in my world there. But as a whole, when I was in Perth, what I was studying was I was studying monetary economics, and I actually have a minor in economics and a minor in cultural anthropology. So fast forward and utilizing those two elements of my experience there is understanding the times. Oddly enough, I do love economics. I love reading reports. I love understanding the moving and shaking of how our world works. And of course, everything we're experiencing here in the States from an economic perspective, as well as, what's affecting us in other countries and, of course, the world as a whole, since we are so interconnected these days. Takeaways from both would really be my ability to be more open-minded and more understanding, or one might say, listen to understand as opposed to listening to respond. And I say that, and the reason my goal or my focus in going to Australia was simply on the fact that I needed to go someplace that spoke English and I was going to enjoy myself, right? So fast forward, I find myself in a quote unquote English speaking country, expecting to have many elements of my American life being prevalent there. So easy example, refills aren't free, right? At no point in my life would I ever have expected to walk into a McDonald's and then find I'm going to have to pay for my refill, right? But that was eye-opening in telling me that, hey, I can't just make assumptions based on what I think I know. I need to be inquisitive and I need to be open-minded and willing to listen. And that is very much important. Back to those initial conversations with carriers and those I'm looking to work with. Am I going ahead and assuming what I think I know, or am I truly listening to understand what their goals, challenges are, and how to effectively take them over the finish line from a hiring perspective?
Actually, I would venture to say that if there's one takeaway that our listeners have from this entire episode, outside of your unique character, it would be that idea of listening to understand. I think, especially at this time of year and branching into the first quarter, it can be a difficult time for drivers. And there's a lot to be said. Can be heated, can be very casual, but in the midst, somewhere in there, there's definitely something being said. And so the more that we listen to our people, to their concerns, whether they're drivers in the office, techs, on the trucks, I think it's a great learning lesson for all of us. And that's the one I'm tucking into my pocket. I want to stick with Sean, the man, for another beat here. We all know the space that you work in is quite crowded. There are many, many vendors working in a driver recruiting support. And there are also lots of big personalities within that sector too. Other than the bow tie, of course, how do you differentiate yourself in a crowded market like that? What do you do to stand out and make yourself and your company a preferred vendor?
Well, there's a couple answers that I could throw to that, but I would say that the biggest piece for me is creating the most positive experience possible. So we all know that we can have the biggest dumpster fire in the world, rails are coming off, the whole 9 yards. But when the day is said and done, you can still maintain a degree of positivity and ultimately walk away from a negative experience still thinking from a positive perspective. That paired with our customer service and our overall entrenchment and understanding of course, the industry and what we're doing. We're not an organization that's claiming to be all things to all people. We do look to, of course, be a very strong supporter in the industries and everything that we serve. But, times can be challenging. And it's important for us to all know and work together to understand that. We win together and we fail together. And this guy is absolutely a fan of winning. So with that being said, providing the utmost insights that we possibly can, ensuring that we both know what our end goal is and what we're needing to accomplish as we take steps forward in either just developing a campaign or fully executing campaigns.
So this makes you think that likewise fleets are also in a very crowded market, both customer facing and driver facing, and they have to stand out in the crowd. So, what can they do to make themselves successful and sought after employers, both now and then looking into the future?
So, not just kind of following the mix, look to be yourself as an organization and look to share what has allowed your organization to be in existence, to this day. Too many times I look at job descriptions all day long and they all look the same. Everybody wants to put a sign-on bonus in here. We have great pay. We have this, we have that. What elements of your organization create the culture you had that allow folks to stay or have the desire to stay and have tenure? But then more importantly, what are you doing, of course, to continue to be forward thinking and to continue to grow your organization and your presence? I think many of those pieces are very important. I just got back from the Veterans Ready Summit in DC, and I myself was very much eye-opened to just the areas that our organization can improve, but a message that many organizations can be doing to consider themselves veterans ready. It's a matter of how are you messaging it? How are you sharing that? Or are you just falling into the mix of everybody else and just saying, I'm supporting hiring veterans, we support veterans, and really taking nothing, not putting pedal to the metal, I would say.
So true. We experience that, similarly with engaging with more women in the industry, something that so many folks are looking to do and to improve on. And someone likened it to backing breast cancer. When breast cancer research and recognition first became prevalent, there were a lot of folks that might put pink, on their marketing in the month of October, slap a pink ribbon somewhere, but that doesn't translate to accommodating for medical leave without any worry of job, while being treated for breast cancer, or better screening or treatment, et cetera. So in any event, I hear what you're saying. And it makes me think of drivers as well. There has to be both asks from companies that are unique as the jobs have changed and the company portfolios have changed within, jobsandtrucks.com. But how do you think drivers can make themselves more attractive as a job candidate and land the role that they want for their career, their overall career, especially when so many recruiters are kind of looking for that new lead as it pops into their inbox?
So, just as if for the organizations, don't fall into the suit or don't be told what you need to share. From a driver perspective, I look at short form applications, I look at full applications, and there's definitely a lot to be told. Many of them just, okay, what type of route are you looking for? Where does your experience lie? Do doubles tank? I've been driving for 10 years, et cetera, but there's much more of a story in there. Tell us about your safety, right? Tell us about how many miles that you've driven without any accidents, around any preventable accidents. There's so many pieces of what a driver has done in their career that don't necessarily make it onto a short form or a long form application or even a resume for that matter. And that's something that we very much push and see on jobsandtrucks.com, as we do provide that opportunity for the drivers to elaborate further on their experience and why they are truly the best candidate for said opportunity. Unfortunately, whether it's drivers or whether it's non-driver type roles, many candidates are not trained to fully sell themselves. I mean, let's face it, when the day is said and done, right, carriers are selling opportunities to drivers and drivers are selling themselves to carriers, right? So if both of the two pieces of the puzzle do not necessarily mesh or align, we find ourselves again continuing to struggle.
True story. Another thing that I always like to ask is about Trucking's next generation, and you have a unique perspective here, I'm sure. We obviously have an aging workforce in trucking, and we have a hard time being sticky with younger newcomers, in large part due to career path models of having to work the toughest job in the industry, often with the lowest pay, just to prove yourselves worthy of better jobs in the industry. So my question to you is, how does your company modify the reach, the platform, the messaging, the engagement, you name it, to get in front of younger people, and maybe not even just today, but tomorrow? What's the plan for tomorrow?
Of course. Well, we look, of course, to follow trends. Obviously, TikTok is obviously the first thing that just kind of comes to mind whenever I hear about, looking to connect with the younger generation. And that's ensuring that we're, of course, messaging in the proper channels. Right. I think Facebook is for, us old folks. I'm a geriatric millennial, I think is how they bucket list me these days. So, you may or may not still find me on Facebook and see that as a value place to advertise. But when you start looking at TikToks, you start looking at Threads, you start looking at other areas where we are finding the younger generation, it's important to have a presence. Even so much as if it's just sharing a funny video with your name, your logo, and some type of affiliation, you're at least creating that awareness, right? I can't tell you how many kids today don't even necessarily know that an Amazon, for example, is in the logistics and transportation space. Many just think of them as a tech giant, right? Where I order all my stuff. Well, when you order all that stuff, how does it get there? Well, there's many drivers and many distribution facilities and many other elements in their space that allow that to happen. So, it's ultimately making sure that we are aligned with where the youth is finding themselves, absorbing media, absorbing data, but then also messaging and ensuring that we're sharing specifics and insights about the organizations and what we're doing. And to really tie it off is amplifying the tech that's coming on board. So many of the trucks, as we think to automation, we think to, even obviously the trucks that still have our drivers, it's going to be a long time before it's going to be a standalone automated driving. But really what's involved in the driver and the technology is being utilized. All of those pieces really look to make up a full focus, full campaign, and positioning yourself to bring on the youth of tomorrow.
All right, last question.
Uh-oh.
And I think that we are even quite possibly the last interview for Taking the Higher Road for 2023. It's possible. Don't quote me on that. But I need to know, do you have a New Year's resolution heading into 2024?
I do. I am taking my life back. So using women in trucking and the Veterans Ready Summit as a focal point, I consistently have had one toe out, one toe in many different areas of my life. I've allowed 2023 and all the wonderment to basically rule me. 2024, I'm ruling my life and ruling it. So I really am looking to do away with much of the clutter and really focus on areas that are important to not only grow myself personally, intrinsically and extensively, but of course, in my industry and what my organization is doing. I think you made the comment about breast cancer. There's far more than just, throwing money at a challenge and putting a pretty logo on a job advertisement or on a site itself. And I'm very much looking forward to being committed or further committing myself to areas that I have allowed to fall by the wayside just because of life and trying to just get myself through 2023 as many others have.
Yeah, it's been an interesting few years, and I still think that times are changing, and it sounds like a great opportunity for you to continue to reshape how you want the future Sean and his experience to look and feel. Sean, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I really enjoyed having you, and I, of course, wish you a very, very happy, healthy holiday season.
Leah, thank you so much for having me. Both myself and my organization, Jobs and Trucks and jobsandlogistics.com, certainly appreciate the opportunity. Hoping that we are the last, because you saved the best for last, if I'm not mistaken. And, hope that we might be able to connect here in the new year.
That's right. I might have to change the title for your episode. I'll think about it. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for joining me on another episode of Taking the Higher Road. Remember, you can submit questions or comments at podcast@driverreach.com. Don't forget to rate and review Taking the Higher Road on whatever platform you listen or watch. And until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.